Okay, I'll call you, okay.
Welcome to tonight's debate. I'm the council president of the league this year. And some of you know this anyway, the state league has approved our name. I'm sorry.
Maybe I'm not sure that.
It's all right. I'm just talking. The mission of the league is to bring as much information as we can to all of you and to have an informed vote when you go to the polls. And the league is open to women and men. If anybody's interested in joining, Mary Gordon, our treasurer, at the table back there, she'll be glad to help you. And the league is, should I say this already? We do not support any candidate or any party. I'd like to thank the league members that are helping us out tonight. We've got quite a few here. Judy Lewis is the debate coordinator. Bill Melber is voter services. Diane Wozniak for the voters guide. Darlene Bowman, Paul Stiles. Jan Rennicki, Irene Little, Jan Little. And the timekeepers tonight will be Brenda Smith and Barry James. And I want to do a special thanks to our moderator tonight, Caitlin Kay, who is a retired attorney and a league member. Caitlin.
Indicating that time has ended. The candidate should conclude his or her sentence at that time. There will be no substitute speakers. If the candidate is unable to attend the debate, he or she may submit a statement to be read by the moderator. The same 3-minute time limit will apply to the written statement. The moderator will stop reading when the time has ended. The moderator will direct a question prepared by the league to the candidates in rotating order. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question. The candidate to whom the question was first directed will be given 30 seconds for rebuttal. Each candidate will have a chance to answer first and then give a rebuttal. Audience questions. At the conclusion of the league debate portion of each race, questions may come directly from the audience. Questioners must approach the podium and be recognized by the moderator. Questioners should identify themselves prior to asking a question. Questioners may direct their questions to any and or all of the candidates. Questions should not include personal attacks against any candidates, but should stick to the issues. Questions will be no longer than 30 seconds. Each candidate will have 1 minute to address the question. There is no rebuttal in this section. Timekeepers will indicate to the moderator when the time has elapsed. Preference will be given to questioners who have not yet asked a question. Closing remarks. Each candidate will have 1 minute to make closing remarks. Will the candidates for the San Marcos City Council member place 5 please take their places at the table? There are 2 candidates in this election, Frank Arredondo and Scott Gregson. Mr. Arredondo, would you like to begin with your opening statement?
Certainly. Good evening. I've had the pleasure of talking with many of you, and almost everyone knows who I am and what I have accomplished. I have served this community as city councilman and mayor. I've been on many organizations, civic groups, and public commissions, too numerous to mention. The greatest satisfaction I have had besides serving as mayor of San Marcos was as Executive Director of Community Action in the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Really, these 3 entities that I served the public was a ministry, serving others to improve their quality of life. That has been my life, serving others. At the last debate, my opponent stated I had served as mayor, but wondered what I had accomplished because San Marcos is still flooding. Really? I was in 2 floods in 1970 and 72. I know what it is to be in anguish over the loss of property. But put this in perspective. I was elected in 1974, and through the intervening years, I worked with Congressman Jake Pickle to fund studies and subsequently dam construction on Purgatory and Willow Creeks, which began construction after my tenure was over with the the city. I spent 21 days straight after Memorial Day flood at CM Allen Homes as chair of the Housing Authority, addressing the 100 units damaged by working closely with FEMA and HUD. My opponent in the last debate stated that he is for career-based jobs, but he, along with a few city council members, have worked to defund the Greater San Marcos Partnership, the entity that has been instrumental in bringing Epic Piping and Amazon to San Marcos, making our community more competitive for wage growth than ever before. More jobs have been added in the last 18 months to San Marcos than the past 18 years because of the GSMP. My opponent, in fact, resigned from the board of the GSMP and supported defunding it. He quit, resigned. Is he against more jobs for San Marcos? And now he's campaigning that he likes the GSMP. He can't have it both ways. He says he is for property rights, yet he has been linked to disrespecting homeowner rights by placing campaign yard signs on Hispanic properties, stating he has a right to have his campaign signs on their yard, though they aren't supporting him. Perception is reality. Too many Hispanics in our community have had their families have been bullied and their integrity belittled. I have a history in San Marcos of respecting everyone, representing everyone. I have always done the right thing for San Marcos. I pledge to you, the voters, to the residents, to nonprofits, to the business community, to always place San Marcos first. I want jobs and opportunity for all.
Your time is up.
A rising tide raises all boats.
Mr. Gregson, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. It's great to be a member of the League of Women Voters, and thanks for hosting this debate. A little about me. I'm a father of 2 married children, about to be a grandfather. I earned a degree in finance from A&M and an MBA from Harvard. I've had a successful career in the private sector and have been involved in countless financial transactions and contract negotiations. Throughout my career, I've been a job creator, building companies and projects that have employed thousands of individuals in high-paying jobs. On City Council, my education, business background, and job creation experience will ensure we get the most from our tax dollars. For the past 19 years, I've been a small business owner here in San Marcos. I've invested in and restored a number of historic buildings in our town square, including the old Holiday Theater on San Antonio Street, turning it into a vibrant and successful live music venue that has brought tens of thousands of visitors into our downtown and created dozens of permanent jobs. I've worked with the HEB Distribution Center on Hunter Road to help create over 300 permanent jobs for our citizens, and worked with HEB on other acquisitions, increasing their presence and investment in our community. All these projects have added hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to the city's property tax rolls. Over the past decade, I have served on 15 civic and city boards and commissions, including the Citizens Utility Advisory Board, where I served as vice chair, as well as the United Way. I have an intense desire to see great jobs created in this community, jobs that will provide meaningful levels of income that give families the opportunity to provide ample food, shelter, and clothing, a quality education for their children, savings for a rainy day, and ultimately a secure retirement. For the past few years now, our citizens have formulated a comprehensive master plan. We are now working to codify this plan into our land development code. Throughout the campaign, I have consistently made a pledge to follow this plan. This plan represents how and where we want our city to grow for the next decade, and I intend to implement it as written by the citizens. For the past decade, I've supported those who have tirelessly worked to protect and respect our single-family neighborhoods and the San Marcos River, and fought to create good jobs for our community. These very same goals are stated clearly in our newly adopted comprehensive plan. Now I'm throwing my hat into the arena to help lead our community forward and ensure, as our citizens have every right to demand, that these issues are fully realized. As our city has become larger and more complex, we need energetic leadership that is willing to commit to the shared vision we have for the San Marcos of tomorrow, while keeping intact the unique character and charm we all share today. We owe this to ourselves and to future generations. I'm Scott Gregson, and I respectfully ask for your trust in your vote. Thank you.
At this point, we'll move to lead questions. First question is, what do you think is the most pressing issue facing the city today? How would you address it? Mr. Mr. Gregson, would you begin with that, please?
I think our most pressing issue is the fact that we're growing very, very quickly. And it's not just growth, it's not just people, it's prosperity. I think we need to be focused on prosperity for this city. Just because we're growing in number of people isn't the kind of marker that we need to say that we're making progress as a community. We know that we're seeing out-migration from Austin. We're seeing those folks, at least from our own research, it's indicating that people moving in have incomes lower than those people already here. So we have to begin to think about the impacts of that on our city, how that's going to impact our social services, how that's going to impact our schools, how that's going to impact our food bank. Those are the things that I think are most critical to be focused on in this community. Obviously, making sure everyone that's here has a great job is important, and I'm committed to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Arredondo?
I think the most pressing issue is jobs. Good jobs that our youth, once they finish their education, if it's high school or college, that they can choose to stay here in San Marcos and give their talents to us. We all want to keep our children close to us. We want them to establish their roots here like our ancestors did. We want them to be able to afford a mortgage and have a quality of life that all of us want. The only way to do that is to continue to recruit good employers. We have Amazon now, and that's a bellwether for San Marcos. The Amazons, the Googles, and the Apples are going to start noticing us, and we'll get better paying jobs because of competition. A rising tide lifts all boats, as I said in my last statement.
You know, what I'm concerned about, I agree with you, rising tides do raise all boats, but if you don't have a boat, you get deeper in water. So we also need to think about exactly how we're going to find the jobs for the folks that are here, or how we're going to make certain that as a community we continue to prosper. As I said, just growth in numbers isn't necessarily the answer. And so we need to really be focused on how we manage this growth going forward. Thank you.
Next lead question. How can the city best deal with neighborhood preservation and student population? Mr. Arredondo?
The city presently is working on the new master plan and the SMTX. And that's a great document. As I said before, that's a guide for us to follow. Now, we need to acknowledge that the university is a great resource to San Marcos. Those students bring energy to our community. They bring new money into our community. And they've been referred to by my opponent as guests. I consider them residents. When they pay rent, the property tax is included in the rent. They go to the grocery store, they go to the gasoline station, they go to Sam's. They spend money in our community. Yes, they're young, but we were also young once. I think we need to continue to get more employers in here so we can retain those students to call San Marcos home.
Mr. Gregson, you have a minute.
We have a comprehensive master plan already in the books. I think in the League of Women Voters Guide, it seems that my opponent indicates that we're not done with it yet. We have a comp plan. It's been adopted by our city council. We're now codifying that plan to the specifics of how it's going to be interpreted through our land development code and through our building standards for the next decade. So I think that we have that plan, and as I said earlier, I'm pledged to stick to that plan. My opponent refers to it as guideline. Well, it's not guideline. It has been something that over 2 years our citizens have litigated and decided. We as a community have decided what we want, where we want growth to be. There's a place for student housing. There's a place for neighborhoods. I have, for the last 10 years, have supported candidates that have been the defenders of neighborhoods. The folks that have gone out and made certain that when it comes down to it, even though they may have lost a vote on council, they were there for our neighborhoods, and I will continue to be that supporter.
Mr. Arredondo, 30 seconds to rebut.
Yes, Mr. Gregson has supported candidates like Melissa Derrick, who's on the record of stating that she wants to charge a $10 fee for people to use the San Marcos River, for the right kind of people to use that river. I don't know how she would characterize what is right for entering the river. we need to remember that the river is state property. It's God's gift to San Marcos. We don't control it. There's too many access points.
Next question. What is your opinion of the city ordinance that would permit sidewalk cafes and carpets? Mr. Gregson?
Well, first of all, I'm going to just take a second to deal with this $10 issue. I never said that. That is not my position. I'm clearly on the record that's not the case. I think it's a little bit misguided that I might be painted with the same brush about something that I've never said. Now, with respect to our downtown, I live in our downtown. I love our downtown. And I think that we have to have a downtown master plan that calls for this type of opportunity to happen. We've spent $12 million burying our utilities. We've spent that kind of money making sure our drainage works, although it just doesn't. That's another issue we can talk about in another question. But we have wide sidewalks, and those sidewalks have been built to accommodate the type of street presence for our commerce. I think we need to have a very robust, active streetscape in our downtown. And I think that the council has proceeded very cautiously and carefully in consideration of this in the ordinance process of developing plans for these sidewalk cafes and parklets.
Mr. Arredondo?
I'm all for increasing business downtown, and I think those sidewalk cafes are great. I think we need to remember that what makes San Marcos great is not only the river, but the charm that we have downtown. But you know, the only way that our local residents can enjoy the downtown area, enjoy the fruits of the river produces, is to have better paying jobs. And there needs to be opportunities for them. And that's what I represent for San Marcos getting on the council. I want opportunities and job growth in this community so we can maintain the lifestyle that we want and we want for our children.
Mr. Gregson, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
It's interesting that my opponent continues to talk about jobs. I mean, I've got a lot of money invested in the city. I've been here for 20 years and spent money in the city. I've probably put billions of dollars at risk in our city to generate jobs, to bring jobs here. And I think I've employed, either directly or indirectly, thousands of people in this city over the period of time I've been here. I'm an advocate for great growth. I'm an advocate for great jobs. I'm an advocate to keep our kids here. And there's not a difference of one bit between my opponent and I on this issue.
Next question. Explain your experience with analyzing and understanding large government budgets. Mr. Arredondo?
Just like any family member, I have a family budget that I work with. When I was mayor and on city council, we did work over the budget. It was a series of meetings. I have not only with the city of San Marcos, but when I worked with Governor Briscoe's office, I also had to put the budget together for the office that I was responsible for. In addition, being with HUD, we did get the appropriations from Congress. Headquarters was the one that dispersed the funds to the field offices. It was my function at the field office to determine how to best use those funds that were appropriated to us. So I'm not a budget analyst, I'm not a whiz, but I have common sense. I know where money comes from and where it needs to go and how much needs to be spent.
Mr. Gregson?
I'm good with numbers. I got an MBA from Harvard. I've run companies the size of our city. I've been involved as the vice chair, the senior voting member of our Citizens Utility Advisory Board, and in charge of $100 million, 2/3 of our $187 million annual budget for the city for the last 4 years. We're in charge also of reviewing and giving comment to our city council on almost $250 million, $300 million of our CIP projects, our capital improvement projects, to be placed in the ground over the course of the next decade. So I've got a lot of experience not only in dealing with government budgets, I've got a lot of experience dealing with budgets that I've had to do payroll, that I've had to fund the cost of, that I've had to run companies whose employees are responsible to me to make certain that at the end of the day that payroll was met. So I've got a lot of experience in numbers, I've got a lot of education, it gives me that experience as well. and I think I'm well started to make sure. I've also been through and seen the last 4 years of budget cycles in the city, and sat through many of those meetings, some, one year, all of them. Thanks.
Mr. Arredondo, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
I think you can have all the education you want and espouse all the millions of dollars that you have handled. All I offer is common sense. I've been there before. Texas mandates that we have a balanced budget. We can't overspend. And we have competent staff that gives us that information. And it's up to us to make a policy decision on how those funds are going to be spent. You don't need an MBA degree for that.
Are there any questions from the audience for these candidates? If you have a question, please come up to the podium. State your name, and your question should be 30 seconds, please. Indicate which candidate you'd like to begin with the answer.
Hi, my name is Lisa Marie Copletta. I appreciate all you've done for our downtown, Mr. Gregson. My question is for Mr. Arredondo. My recollection is that you were at City Hall during citizen comment periods after the May historic flood. My recollection is that you were speaking on behalf of Greater Partnership San Marcos funding. How do you explain this behavior? And then the second part of the question is, speaking of ancestors, how do you feel about preserving Indian artifacts with all this building around downtown? Thank you.
Mr. Arredondo?
Is that one or two questions? I already forgot what she asked. One about the artifacts. Okay, buildings would be built. I think that we have to go through, I think there's a historical commission at the state level that mandates what needs to be done. What was the other question you had?
Mr. Arredondo, my question is, at the City Hall citizen comment period after the historic May flood, there was a deluge of citizens who came to speak. My recollection is you were not there to speak for Blanco Gardens, sir, but you were there to speak for funding for Greater Partnership San Marcos. How do you explain that behavior?
I don't know how you characterize behavior by my presence there. When I have something to say, I'll speak. Now, the reason, one, everybody used to know, I lived in Blanco Gardens. I was on North Barbara Drive. I know how the water flooded that community. But when I was living there, the streets were enough to carry the water. The Blanco River this year, when it flooded Memorial Day, was historical highs. There was not much that could have been done to take care of that. Now, I think that the people that were affected directly had the first right to go and complain to the city council and make their concerns known. I know when to step aside and let others speak. When it's my turn, I don't hesitate. I'll get up and I'll voice my concern.
Mr. Gregson? Yes.
I know that for the last 10 years I have stood with those who best represent neighborhoods. I spoke before the flood, before the Woods apartment ever happened, against that project for it to become a park. Our citizens voted 74% for that project to become a park, a supermajority of our citizens. The police chief said that should not become an apartment, it should be left vacant land, or it should not become a student apartment. It was. I know that when I've talked about being at the council or talking in public about these things, I have not agree with you. I do agree with you, Ms. Capolletta. I have not seen my opponent at those meetings talking about these apartments. I've also been there talking for Franklin Square, Council Forest, Oak Heights against the buoy track, the retreat with respect to Oak Heights, Sierra Circle, Houston Heights, and now Sessions Canyon with respect to Forest Hills and Alamo. Those are the people that I've been there fighting for and working with candidates and supporting those and helping. Thank you.
Are there other questions from the audience?
Good evening. Thanks, guys, for volunteering.
Your name, please?
My name is Ben Quamley, and I really appreciate that San Marcos has such great leadership, and I really appreciate you guys volunteering to step up once again. So I guess my question is, I live over there in Blanco Gardens, and the Woods donated 20 acres as a park, and I'd just like to know what you guys think the best use of that park would be.
Mr. Gregson, you want to start with that one?
It's parkland. So the first thing we got to do if we're going to do anything with it is make sure we clean it up so it can be used. We also have to figure out exactly who's going to be able to and how they're going to be able to access it. It's a thumbnail of a piece of land, and I've not been back there myself, I haven't walked it. But at the same time, I've seen the aerials of it. I know the conversation that the Parks Board that I've attended about the difficulty with it. I know the conversation that the police chief has had about how we're going to manage it and monitor it. I know the Parks Board has talked about having to hire 2 to 3 additional parks rangers to basically see after it. We have about a $3 million budget for our Parks Board now. I see that number going up significantly if we're able to put this into our park system in an adequate way. So I think there's lots of work that needs to be done to make sure that we understand exactly what we're going to do before we reach out and make any conclusions about exactly what we're going to do.
Mr. Arredondo?
I have walked Cape's Camp, the park. I have walked it after the flood. It's still a beautiful resource. It does need to be cleaned up. It needs to be shored up. It could be another Rio Vista example. That acreage there is larger than what we have at Rio Vista. Now, I have utmost confidence in the police chief and in the park rangers to take care of any issues that crop up, come to the attention of the city. I think that what we need to be grateful is that we're able to have some park land there. Had the owners not agreed to give us the park, that would have been the ownership of the Woods Apartments. So we need to be grateful that we still have an apartment and we have the resources to manage it.
I don't see any more audience questions, so we will go ahead and move to closing remarks. Each of you will have 1 minute to close. Mr. Gregson, would you start, please?
Thanks to the League of Women Voters once again for hosting this event. I'm committed to bring great jobs and prosperity to our community. Jobs that give our children the opportunity to stay and raise their families here with us. I believe we also owe it to future generations to strive to give them the opportunity to enjoy the unique character and charm of the city we enjoy today. We're going to grow. Growth without respect for this vision is not leadership. I ask you to ask yourself one question. Who can I trust to prepare and lead us into the future we want? Someone with an unwavering commitment to neighborhoods in our river, a spotless record of community service, and committed to the plan we developed, or someone who has expressed a willingness to turn his back on our hard work and alter our community's plan for its future. The future of San Marcos is now in your hands, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Scott Gregson, and I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Arredondo.
I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity to talk about the important issues facing San Marcos and the differences between myself and my opponent. At the University Star debate, my opponent said, we have a job to get you a job, a good paying job, not one that just pays a living wage, but one that pays more. We owe it to you. Yet, he has rigorously opposed the Greater San Marcos Partnership, which will make that a reality. He resigned from that board. Sadly, that isn't the most unfortunate statement he's made. In the outset statement, he said he would like to see San Marcos' economy grow, but does not want more people in our community. If that is the case, why does he continue to tell Texas State students that he wants them to be able to get a career-based job in San Marcos and stay if they choose to? You deserve a candidate who has a record of leadership, not a record of flip-flopping. I'm disappointed to see that the tactics that have been handled by the League of Women Voters. They had originally selected Cuauhtemoc to have this debate, but they changed the venue to come to San Marcos to the activity center, citing concerns of a perceived bias towards one candidate because they were Hispanic. That is not an insult to the integrity of the Hispanic community. I would challenge those on the executive committee to provide a more vivid example. I think it's clear that a vote for Frank Arredondo is a vote for San Marcos.